Welcome to an Indie Film Podcast film review. I'm Victoria.
And I am Chuck. This week we're going to be reviewing the film Pretty, which is the brainchild of Metecan Duren, who wrote, directed, shot, edited, and composed this horror feature, all at the age of 19.
Pretty is a zero-budget indie film, meaning that it was definitely a passion project for the 19 to 21-year-old students who made this film.
Victoria, how would you rate the movie Pretty? Would you buy it, rent it, or wait until it's free?
I would wait until it's free.
I'm going to agree with you for the movie Pretty. I am going to wait until it's free, which it is free right now online on YouTube. We'll put a link in the description. And why don't you tell everybody what Pretty is about, Victoria?
After contact with the ghost of a murdered young girl, Pretty becomes obsessed with uncovering what happened. But as strange occurrences plague her home, she finds herself in a twisted game of love, murder, and jealousy. Which is fair. I do think there was a lot of other stuff happening in this film as well. There was a lot of supernatural lore. There was a lot of, well, I guess we mentioned jealousy, but sibling rivalry, cousins were coming out of nowhere, family line tragedies, weird neighbors. There was a lot happening in this film. It was a huge undertaking.
It really was. I felt like it kind of blurred the lines between experimental and then a traditional movie with a plot. Unfortunately, the mixture of the two didn't work for me. I would have preferred something to have a little bit more solid of a plot, or just lean into the unknown and make it more mystical, more experimental, less traditional story-driven film, and lean on the supernatural elements of it.
I will say I actually have that as one of my highlights about the film.
Okay, let's talk about what we liked. Yeah.
I like that the film was super stylized. They leaned really hard into slow cinema, which I feel like that is just such an intense choice to make for a horror film that turns slasher home invasion.
Yeah.
That was a bold choice. And in some moments, it's so uncomfortable that it actually does kind of work and does set you up for some jump scares that did actually startle me, which doesn't happen a ton in movies anymore.
Okay. Well, the jump scares didn't get me.
Fair.
Really. But I will say that the cinematography caught my attention early on. And I was not expecting a lot in the quality of a film when you're essentially dealing with one-person crew.
This is a teenager's first feature film where he said, nah, it's fine, I've got this, to every crew role. And you would assume grainy camcordery footage.
Yeah, but it looked good, especially at the beginning. And I would put it up against a lot of filmmakers that have been doing this for years.
Yeah, I will say there were definitely some scenes where you could tell there was just a single key light.
Yeah.
But they still managed to make some strategic shadows happen. There were like some fun silhouettes on the wall.
Yeah.
There were really cool streetlight scenes with people just lit only by the streetlights way down the road. But you could still see what's going on. I thought that was interesting.
A large amount of the frames did have depth. To them. They were solid. And then also the soundtrack on this film was unique.
Yeah.
So Duren is a musician, and it shows. And there was some cool risers and things like that that's like the horror sound effect that they use to kind of put you on the edge of your seat. But they were uniquely mixed, and I thought that he did a great job on that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to edit and then go back through and then add your own music over the top of it.
Do all the sound on top of it, which is really, really impressive. Like, sound gets ignored by most filmmakers. Yeah. So good on this whole team for making it happen. I will say I actually liked the story itself.
You did.
There was a lot happening. I liked that there was that lore component. I liked that there was this history of the rabbit in the forest. I liked that there were elements of the story, the fable that was sort of influencing this family line.
Yeah.
And you got to learn more about it as you went and see it kind of show up here and there in the characters and some of the things they were wearing or doing. I liked that. I thought that was really solid.
Yeah.
Which is impressive.
Yeah. That was good. I liked the lore. It would have been nice if it was shown and then not explained later on.
I would have loved it if that had been the mantra for most of the movie.
For sure. Just leave the dialogue out of it It's totally fine. No need for text message conversations.
There were a lot of text message
We might touch on that a little bit later. But the one thing that I liked about this in that regard, as far as like the mythology and the symbolism, there was the white rabbit symbolism, which as a high schooler in the late 90s and early 2000s, and having watched The Matrix and having watched Donnie Darko, I like that, especially Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
This was a Donnie Darko-esque creepy rabbit figure that was presenting itself in this woman pretty's world.
Yes.
Do you want to talk?
Sure.
Do you want to talk about some of the criticisms that you have of the movie?
Yeah, I think my biggest criticism is art department.
Oh, okay. So I was going to talk about continuity. And
Yeah.
I have a feeling that that's what you're going to jump into here.
A little bit. I'm mainly just going to call out the really glaring ones that did take it from that suspense horror into very cult classic B horror vibes, which again is not bad,
right on,
but is definitely way more funny than it will ever be terrifying.
Yes.
Unfortunately. So there were just some little issues. I would say if you're a filmmaker and you're filming in your own bedroom, but now it's supposed to be a teenage girl's bedroom,
you might want to change the decoration.
Yeah, you might want to take down some of your film awards, perhaps remove your childhood photos unless you often wore sweater vests, but also your name and initials were hanging right on the wall too.
Yeah,
so
oopsie daisy.
Those things, they were blatantly in frame and they were absolutely in focus, which I think says a lot for, an average 19-year-old cinematographer.
Yeah.
Couldn't always do that. But because it was in focus, just pop those off the wall real fast before you hit record.
Okay. For the art department, then that's what your concern was. There was also continuity issues, people magically changing clothes from
suddenly,
one shot to the next.
Though, to be fair, for the main character, I think they just forgot what coat they had her in.
That's true.
And supposedly they filmed this over the course of about 6 months.
That's hard to do.
This
is why it's good to have more than one person as your crew,
yes,
so that somebody can take notes and make sure that we have all of the set pieces that we need to have between different days, so that you don't run into those continuity issues where you're shooting the next part of a scene 2 weeks later and then,
you have no idea who was where or what happened.
It happens. It happens. I also want to say that the audio was distracting for me. The dialogue, the soundtrack was good, but the dialogue was distracting. You could tell that they didn't get a lot of good location sound, and that's why it's good to have a location sound recordist on set with you. So it was overdubbed. We call it ADR, and it sounded too close and too present. And so it took me out of the film a lot of times because you could hear their voice. Sometimes there would be some sound effects that were placed, and then other times they wouldn't exist, like maybe some footsteps missing, some footsteps there.
Like when she was sneaking out of her bedroom and you hear no noise whatsoever in that room other than her stepping on the receipt, which just sounded like a big, really loud crumple, which, to be fair, was an important sound.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that one was added back in. But
when you're building a soundscape, it's important to build the whole soundscape and not just the key pieces. And it's time consuming and it takes a lot of work. But, that's what keeps people invested in the film and doesn't pull them out of that fantasy.
Yeah. And do it enough times.
Yeah.
Because, at 19, you could do this a lot more times than I'll be able to.
For sure.
We'll go down long before you. Okay. The next thing, the performances.
Yeah.
So in the research that I could find about the film itself, none of these people are dedicated actors. This was definitely a passion project. They did this in their spare time over the course of 6 months. They're all in university. They're all studying a wide variety of things. I think the director is studying in med school, I think. Yeah. So this is not something they do. This was just for them to have fun. So then, of course, releasing it on YouTube for free. Brilliant move.
I love
Absolutely. Get some eyes on it because it is enjoyable to watch. The performances were rough.
Yeah.
They were definitely not experienced actors, but to be fair, they were all kind of on the same level. So it almost felt like a stylistic choice.
There we go.
To make everyone a little stilted and a little off. But then you have some moments where there's one scene where one of the main characters, the sister Emma, is just reading her lines off of her phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, that you probably could have just paused, taken a few minutes to learn the lines, get them down pat, and then hit record.
This entire, the one-person crew and the cast are all from Istanbul,
Yes.
So this is a Turkish film that was actually recorded and written in English
Yeah.
as well.
Which was impressive.
Which it was, yeah. I'm not going to say anything about the English. I don't know if there were any language barriers. They did not come through at all.
No,
So
not at all.
that was really solid, but I don't know how that may have affected actors' performances if that is their second language and fluency. But at the same time, yes, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
It could have used a little bit more polish, a little bit more rehearsal, or some actors that had a little bit more experience under the belts. But at the same time, this is how you get experience. And these are teenagers. So
And again, it is a fun watch.
Yeah.
It's not like a scary horror movie that's going to make you cringe and squirm in your seat or anything, but it is entertaining to watch.
If you want to see some awesome scenes that made me get a good laugh, go to the 1 hour and 10-minute mark on the film.
Things pick up there.
You can start seeing the murders happen, and I was enormously entertained from that point forward. I did have to focus for the first half of the film, though.
Yeah, but from that point on, classic B-horror slasher
Yes.
for quite some time, and absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderfully done.
Victoria, who do you recommend see this movie?
Actually, for this one, I say Step Aside, The Room, and also Tommy Wiseau. I think that Pretty is the next cult classic horror fan and B-horror fan film that will soon rise to internet memedom.
Damn.
That's my prediction.
Quite the statement. I know there's some scenes in there that I could cut into some pretty hot vertical videos.
They would be delightful.
Right on. Well, I'm going to say that this movie is for creepy old men interested in seeing college-age women hang out in nightgowns.
There was a lot of fancy evening wear.
Yep.
Not in a provocative, overly sexualized way. I would like to clarify that. This
True.
was not, they were not just, dressing up women like dolls for the sake of doing it. But yeah, I was impressed. I'm like, man, at 19 or college age or whatever, I didn't afford satin and lace. That wasn't what I wore.
Yeah, there were lots of outfit change too. So if
There
you're
were a
interested
lot
in
of
that,
costume
check
changes.
it out. Yeah. So we definitely recommend that you watch this movie. It's on YouTube. The link will be in the description.
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Victoria?
I think that's everything.
Shall we succinctly say farewell?
I think so.
Bye.
Bye.